believe we are live. If there's anyone who is tuning in that can let me know if the audio is okay and if you can hear me, that would be fantastic. This is going to be a super casual stream today. I'm going to attempt to make some chilled out dub techno with the Polyend Tracker Mini. Alright. Probably had too much coffee already, but it is what it is. Just trying to find out if we are in fact live on the channel. If my audio is coming through okay. Alright. Looks like we are live on the channel, so I'm going to assume that the audio is coming through okay. Working on a pack for the Polyend Tracker Mini. It's called Dub Spectrum, and as you may have guessed, it's a dub techno themed sound bank for the Tracker Mini. It's got over 700 brand new samples, and then a collection of samples from my previous sample packs over the last few years that I've put together here. It's got a total of over 4,000 samples in total so far. And I'm going to just play you some of the patterns that are going to be included in this pack. And we're going to try to make a pattern or two from scratch today as well. Let me go ahead and load up another pattern. I'm going to assume that, that the viewers have some sort of familiarity with the Polyend Tracker or the Polyend Tracker Mini. I'm not going to be going over every single detail of how I'm interacting with it, but I just press Shift and the number 3, and that gets me into the load menu where I can load another project if I want. That was project number 17 that's included, and I'm going to go and open up project number 18 here so we can hear another one of these projects. Perfect audio. Hey, Toballusion, thanks for tuning in, and thank you very much for letting me know about the audio. I really appreciate that. This is just kind of an off-the-cuff stream today. I was going to be working again on making some patterns for this new sound bank for the Polyend Tracker Mini, and I thought may as well just go live and share the process with some of you today as well. All right. So this pack is all about the dub techno. Lots of new dub chord stabs and kick loops and percussion loops and hat loops and all kinds of tools that one would need to put together that authentic dub techno sound that I love so well. Lots of texture-y kind of patterns that I've put together so far to be included in this pack. Alright, before we get started making a pattern from scratch today, I'm just going to play a couple more of the patterns that are included in this pack already, so that we can maybe get a few more people on the stream before I actually start making something from scratch today. We're going to open pattern number 16. Looks like we got 10 people watching the stream. Alright. Welcome everybody. It's going to be just a super casual dub techno hangout today. If anyone hears the audio distorting or not being loud enough, just let me know in the chat. That'd be great. And as we start, getting further in the stream today. What's happening, Tony? Thanks for tuning in, man. So I've tried to include a lot of different tools in this pack so far. So you don't have to just only make, one kind of dub techno. There's tools to make faster tempo dub techno, tools to make slower tempo dub techno, all that kind of dub stuff that I love. I'm looking to include a lot of patterns as well for inspiration in this sound bank. Not exactly sure how many patterns in total will be included, but I'm thinking at least 25 patterns will be included. And this is the Tracker Mini from Polyend. It's the second generation tracker. I usually, interact with it. I'm just holding it in my hands like a Game Boy. It's been really fun to work with. But what I love most about the Tracker Mini is that it's not limited to mono samples. It can load full stereo samples. So that's what this pack is all about. It's about a dub techno themed pack that is based on stereo samples. There are some mono samples that are included as well, but the majority of the samples that are included in this pack, and certainly all of the new samples that I've created for this pack, are all full stereo samples. That also means that this pack is not compatible with the OG tracker because that can only load mono samples. So this is specifically a pack for the Tracker Mini. For those of you who aren't familiar at all with the tracker, it's an 8-track groove box, sample-based groove box. There are no built-in synthesizers to the tracker or the Tracker Mini. It's just a sample-based device. So if you love the dub like I love the dub, this is definitely a pack for you, because all of the tools that you need to create this type of sound are what this pack is about. This pack is called Dub Spectrum, and it's going to be out very shortly. Let's just load one more of the existing patterns before we start making something from scratch today. I've included so many different folders of samples here that it's really easy to get started creating your own dub techno themed grooves from a variety of starting places. You can start by loading up like textures, you can start by loading up some cool chord stabs, you can start by loading up some cool drums and percussion loops. Any number of ways you can start creating dub techno grooves with this pack, and they're potentially going to lead to some different results depending on how you choose to approach it as well. And that was my goal with this pack, as is my goal with most of the packs that I make. I like to put as many tools as possible into the packs so you can utilize those in your own original productions. Yeah, Toballusion says he just learned about the mini version. It sounds dope. It's very dope. It's also battery powered, so you can literally just grab it and a pair of headphones or earbuds and you're off and running, making tracks. And when you're done making, tracks or patterns or whatever, you can render those out with the device itself. render out the tracks individually as like stems from your projects. You can then load those tracks into something like, Ableton if you want to master those, stems with the plugins and tools that we have available in something like Ableton. Or you can just render it down to a 2-track, stereo file. And there you've got, like a master, wave of what you've created. I love the fact that it does the rendering for you. You don't have to like record it out like an old school Groovebox into some other recorder. You can just render the tracks out or the stems out directly with the device itself. All right, what let's do then is let's go ahead and start making something from scratch today using the tools in this Dub Spectrum pack that I'm creating. What we're going to do is we're going to go new project. Okay, and we're going to save this. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with using hardware, this is going to seem really tedious, but this is the very first step that what we have to do. I just want to make sure what number pattern I'm on. I'm going to be saving this as Dub Spectrum 19. Okay, so we're going to go save. I'm going to save on the SD card where all my other projects are. So we're going to click save, and now we just use the directional pad here to delete the existing name, and I'm going to put the caps lock on, and now we just enter the numbers, the letters one by one. And this is Dub space Spectrum and there's an auto name feature as well for if you wanted to come up with wacky names and stuff. Dub Spectrum, but I like to label things appropriately so that we can find them when we're looking for them. And this is going to be project 19 of the included projects. I hope you guys can see the screen clearly today on the Tracker Mini. I'm using just a webcam as the overhead cam here, so it's not always the clearest camera. I'm also using kind of a makeshift metal stand. I don't have an actual dedicated stand for the Tracker Mini yet, and I'm usually just using it as a handheld device. So it's a little, kind of odd looking on this stand today. So we've got that labeled now, Dub Spectrum 19. I'm gonna hit save, and now we're ready to go. We've got, an 8-track grid. We can put any sound that we want on any step of any track in the patterns that we create. So it's not necessarily like 1 track per sound. You can squeeze more than 1 track per sound if you care to work that way. The only thing you have to keep in mind is that each track is a mono track, meaning if another sound plays on the track, it's going to cut off whatever sound was already playing on that track. So I can't, for example, put a loop on track 1 and then slide some other sounds in there. It will cut off that loop playing. Speaking of loops, I'm thinking maybe we'll create a couple of patterns today, but let's just see how it goes. So for this first pattern, we're going to keep it really simple and really straightforward. And I'm going to start by loading a kick loop from my sample pack. We're just going to hit Shift and the number 2. That gets us into the loading sample screen. And muscle memory, I find, kicks in pretty quickly with the Tracker Mini. I've heard people complain that they miss the jog wheel for scrolling around. I haven't really found that to be an issue personally. You can also plug in, I'm pointing to the back like it's there. It's actually on the front. You can plug in a MIDI input if you want to have a separate, MIDI controller to play your notes with. But we're just going to be doing this really straightforward today and just using the device itself. No MIDI controllers, no fancy stuff. So I'm going to scroll down here to the samples folder, and I'm going to scroll down to Electronisounds, and then I'm going to scroll down into the Dub Spectrum folder. And this is the amount, just over 4,000 samples in total in this pack so far. It's not 100% done, but it's very close. So we've got some atmosphere and texture loops, some drum and rhythm loops, some one-shots that I sampled from the sound bank I made for the Polyend Medusa synthesizer, some extra melodic loops here, some sub-bass sounds, some tom sounds, some sounds that I recorded out of my Virus Darkstar synthesizer. The entire Dean's Dub Bunker sample pack is included here, so lots of other folders of loops and effects loops and kick loops and percussion loops and melodic loops. That entire sample pack is here to dig through. And that's kind of the point of this particular pack, is that if you love the dub, there's enough stuff, enough content here to dig through to keep you busy and making cool sounding dub tracks like forever, you know. Um, There's a pack of sounds that I made from my Euro rack. There's the Dean's Noise Candy full sample pack. There's the Devious Dub Techno full sample pack. And then we start going into the Dub Spectrum specific content, which is like some add-on loops, some bass loops, some clap one-shots, some deep dive loops that I recorded out of my Dub Techno Deep Dive sample pack for the 1010 Black Box. For those of you who aren't familiar with me and my sound banks, that's what I do for a living through Electronisounds, as I make sound banks mostly and sample packs for mostly hardware machines, like the Digitac, the Polyend Tracker, the Polyend Play, the 1010 Black Box, you name it. We've got a huge folder of chord stabs, a huge folder of hat loops, and then I'm just going to stop here because it goes on for quite a bit beneath here, but I'm not going to waste your time just ranting about the contents of this pack. We're just going to enter this folder here, which is the Dub Spectrum kick loops with verb pump already baked in to kind of get that sidechained reverb vibe on the kick drum. We're just going to scroll through these randomly until I find one that I'm like, yeah, I'll make a pattern with that today. So they're like 1-bar loops. Hey, we got Funk Kinetic in the chat. All right. Thanks for tuning in. So lots of different vibes on these different kick drums. Some are more, aggressive and clicky with some high end. What kind of like that one? That was number 8. Some are a little larger if you want to get a little stompy. Really vibey one there. Here there's kind of that reverb texture of like pumping away that's just baked into these. There's plenty of one-shots in this pack as well, like if you're not into using loops at all. But the Tracker Mini is awesome in that it can chop up loops as well. It has a sample editor built right in as well. I like that one. Let's go ahead and load that. We're just going to click add, and that's going to import that sample to the project. I'm going to, let's see here, I'm going to hit us over to the arrangement page, and if you're looking for like super hot tips on like how to use the Tracker Mini, this is not going to be that type of video. I'm actually pretty basic with how I use the Tracker Mini. We're not going to be doing any fancy stuff today. We're just going to be like loading samples and arranging those samples on the grid basically. To do that, we need to be in record mode, so I'm going to press the record button. And we need to adjust the tempo of the track to the tempo of our loop. Most of the loops that are included in this pack are at 110 BPM, and they're all in the key of F minor. So it's like one giant Lego set. All of these loops and samples will really easily, did I go like this? Will really easily work together without a whole lot of like searching different sample packs and all that kind of stuff. That's the point of these, is that they will work. They're made to work together, per se. So if I hit Shift and 1, that gets us into the song mode where I can adjust the global tempo. If I hold the tempo and press the big minus down twice, that gets us down to 110 beats per minute. I can press 1 again and get us back to the arrangement page, and now I can just start putting in that loop where I want it to go. By default, it starts a pattern length at 32 beats, which is a 2-bar pattern. These are 1-bar kick loops, so if I just put that loop in on the downbeat of every measure and hit play, we're immediately gonna get that kick rhythm happening. I think I'm gonna mess up the camera real fast, but my intention here actually is to turn the volume up now that we're just kind of creating. Just let me know if that gets too loud for you guys at home, or if anyone's listening on decent speakers and it starts distorting your speakers, please just let me know. All right, if we go over to the global tab by pressing the number 4, these are the shortcut buttons that you kind of get muscle memory on as you use the device. But if we go to the global screen, we can turn up the space. I like to put that to a setting of about 3. That's kind of like a stereo width effect inside of the Tracker Mini that I like to, set right at the very beginning of the project. You heard probably, if you're listening on decent speakers, that it does have an effect right on that kick sound. And it makes it just a little bit wider in the stereo field. And since we are using, all stereo samples today, I think that's a really good way to start off by setting the space to a setting of 3. All right. Now we want to load something else to work with this kick. So I'm going to go Shift and 2 to get us back to the sample loading screen. Looks like we've got 23 people watching. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or just say hey so that I know the stream is live and stuff like that. We don't really have a lot of activity in the chat so far, which is fine. But, if you're here, let me know. Be cool, right? All right, so we've got ourselves a kick loop happening. A lot of options for where we could go here, but one of the things that really, is what Dub Techno is about to me is establishing like an atmosphere, like a vibe. So what I think we're going to do is I think we're going to add like some vinyl noise in the background to kind of get that like sort of grit and sort of atmosphere, like maybe we're hearing this from an old record per se. So what I'm going to do to find that is I think we're going to go into, I was going to go to Dean's Noise Candy, but I think actually we're going to maybe instead go to, I've got a folder here with a few long, dirty atmosphere beds in it that I made specifically for the Dub Spectrum pack. Let's hear a few of those. Once I go into the, load menu, I can just preview a sample. This has kind of like a pad sound in the background and some vinyl noise and kind of like some we're outside kind of atmosphere, like with some bird noises in the background. Just kind of giving us a cool vibe right there. Let's hear another one. Maybe more of an intense vibe on that one. Let's hear the next one. So 3 different sort of vibes we could easily start off with there, but I've also got some just noise with no pad in the background if we want to like not have a pad but just add some sort of vinyl and maybe some outdoor atmosphere. And I have a couple in here that are just vinyl as well. Like this one's really mellow. I don't know if you can hear that if you're listening on your phone, but it's just the vinyl sound. Let's go ahead and load that first one, I think, because it really just establishes a nice, smooth, chilled out atmosphere right from the jump, right? So I'm going to just stop the thing from playing. We don't have to. We can, if we want, we can load samples while it's playing, but I'm going to, want to make it a little easier to talk over this. As we hover over the samples, hopefully we're still in focus here on the stream. As we hover over the different samples, you'll see this little meter on the right-hand side, this little red meter, change in size. And that's letting us know how much of the Tracker Mini's memory we're going to use up by loading that sample. These are pretty long samples, so you can see we're going to take a big chunk of the available memory by loading these into it. But I'm not trying, I'm going to go ahead and click Add, and we're going to, whoops, it says you're going to replace that instrument. I didn't select the second slot to load that in before I clicked Add. So now we're just going to load that to the project. I find that, when I'm making tracks or patterns in the Mini, I haven't even come anywhere close to maxing out its internal memory. And this is like, this atmosphere that we're loading here is like over a minute long, for example. So there's plenty of sampling time available. If you're trying to do a full set, of like 6 songs or something like that in one project, you might start getting a little bit cramped for space on the hard drive, but we're not worrying about that at all. I'm just making one track at a time, and so I'm going to go ahead and load that really long sample here. What I like to do with those atmosphere samples is I like to load them in on track 8 because it's just kind of out of the way. We can get 4 tracks on the screen really easily, and also see the effects commands that we can add to those tracks. There is a way to view all 8 tracks at the same time, but I just don't work that way. I just scroll back and forth between the tracks. The track numbers are on the top of the screen here. So we're just going to go ahead and pop that in. And the length of this pattern is still just 2 bars, just 32 beats. I want it to be a full, as long as it can be. The patterns can be 128 beats, so like 8 measures long. So we're going to go ahead and turn this into an 8 measure pattern so that we get a full 8 measures of that atmosphere sound, playing in the background before it loops around on itself. I'm going to go ahead and click the More button, and we're just going to click Duplicate Pattern, Duplicate Pattern, Duplicate Pattern, and now it's saying pattern is too long to, duplicate that again. So if we click the More button, we'll see now that the length is at 128 steps, not 32 anymore. And if I press play, that atmosphere is just sort of playing now in the background, and it's not going to loop around until it plays for a full 8 bars. Let's listen for that. Now it's just looping as the pattern loops around, and it's a pretty seamless loop. We're not really hearing it, What I want to do though is I like to add some reverb to that background texture. So we're going to hit the number 4 to go into the config page, and I'm going to go into the reverb settings. We have a global reverb and a global delay built into the Tracker Mini. I'm going to pump up the size of that from a default of 50, like way up, to maybe like 80. I'm going to bring the damping on that reverb down to 40 instead of 50. I'm going to push the pre-delay on that reverb up to 60 instead of 50, and I'm going to push the diffusion on that reverb up to 90 instead of 80. Just doing a little bit of extra settings on what that global reverb will sound like when I start sending this sound to it. Now if I press 2 to go back into the instrument page, we've got some settings here. I can choose any instrument I have loaded by just pressing and holding this instrument button here at the top, and then I can select whichever instrument I have. I only have 2 instruments loaded. It considers the samples you load as an instrument. Okay, we've only loaded just the kick loop and just the atmosphere. So as long as I have the atmosphere selected, whatever I do in this page is affecting that sample only. So I'm going to click the More button, and I'm going to just max out the reverb on that texture sound. I'm also going to pump up the delay send on that quite a bit. We're not really going to hear that, but it's just because there's not a bunch of rhythms to delay on that atmosphere sound, but it's still going to help us get a thicker, more washy, more ambient type of texture on that sound. So let's hear it now. I don't think that that atmosphere pad needs to be quite as loud. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bring the volume down a little bit so that the kick drum is still kind of our main focus here, and that atmosphere sound is more of a background than a main focus. I'd like to do some automation on that sort of texture though, right from the beginning, to start really building a vibe, a moving and alive sounding groove here. So if I hit the number 2 a couple of times, it goes back and forth between the main instrument screen and the instrument automation screen. Here I can select panning, the actual panning effect on that atmosphere, and I can assign an LFO to the panning of that sound. Now, if you're listening on, your headphones or listening on a pair of studio monitors, for example, you're going to be hearing that pad start to ever so slowly move back and forth between those speakers. I can adjust the amount of panning here, and I'm going to bring that down so that it's just a subtle movement in that pad. We don't need a really extreme back and forth shifting per se. Now if I go back to the main instrument parameters screen, I can put a low pass filter on that pad and start bringing the cutoff down, right? We can really start to hear it when I get really low in the cutoff like that. But I'm going to set this maybe to about 70. I'm going to bring the resonance up to maybe like just a little bit of resonance on that filter. And And now we're going to do the same thing we did with the panning, but to the filter, so that that atmosphere is not only panning back and forth a little bit, but that we're getting a little bit of filter movement. And we kind of just start doing this a little bit with the sound. So I'm going to press the number 2 to get us back to the instrument automation page. I'm going to go to cutoff. I'm going to go down to the LFO on the cutoff now. By default, it's just a triangle shaped LFO, and that's what I want, just a really smooth and subtle LFO. I'm going to change it from 128 steps down to 96 steps, so it's doing this at a little bit of a different rate than the panning. So we're kind of just chilling, but I don't want it so extreme. I don't want like you to really feel that we're doing a lot of movement. I want it to be really subtle what's happening here still. So I'm just going to set the amount of movement on that filter to 20. So it's just a really subtle thing that's happening here. I'm going to go back to the instrument page and I'm going to bring that texture down just another click as well. Now you can save while the pattern is playing, which I really love about, you know, using the Tracker Mini. If you're just sitting there grooving away with your feet up and you're, you know, just making patterns and stuff, you don't have to like stop the vibe to save what you've created so far. And so we're going to do that. We're going to hit Shift and the number 3 to go into the Save menu. I'm just going to hit Save, and it's going to save the project because we've already named it. Yo, we got point 2 in the chat. What's happening, my man? Thanks for tuning in. Hope you're having a good morning. All right, so now just in case anything were to go wrong, we wouldn't lose the work we've already got going here. Now we're going to add something else to the mix. We're going to load another sound, so we'll go into the loading menu by pressing Shift and the number 2. I'm going to go ahead and select the slot I want it to load into. I want it to load into an empty slot. And then all we have to do is just decide what we'd like to load. I've got a folder of brand new percussion loops that I've created for the Dub Spectrum pack. Let's go into that folder and see what we can find in there. There's a whole bunch of those loops at 104 beats per minute, which matches the tempo of the Devious Dub Techno full pack that's included in here. And there's also a whole wealth of percussion loops at 110 beats per minute, which is what the majority of the new Dub Spectrum loops are, you know, created at. Again, I really like to include a lot of content. There's I can't stress that enough, over 4,000 samples for you to, you know, dig through here. So we're just going to start previewing some of these percussion loops. I like that one. That's number 11. That's kind of groovy too. I'm not sure that I want to get that frenetic and busy with the pattern, but I really like that number 12. Skip a couple down, maybe 25. They're not totally synced to the tempo when you're previewing them. It's just, you know, my finger triggering the loop. Ooh, I like that one. Let's go with that. It's an interesting vibe. That's percussion loop 28 here. I'm just going to click the add button, and it's going to load that into the blank slot. If we go back over to the pattern arrangement screen, now the reason it's not moving is because we're in record mode. As soon as I take us out of record mode back into play mode, it starts scrolling again. But it's not easy to just pick where you want things to land while the screen is moving. So when you're placing the notes, you need to be in that record mode. I'm going to put this percussion loop on track 2. And to get us to the very top of track 2 to the 1, I can do a shortcut of pressing Shift and Insert. That gets us right to the top. And it by default will start putting in the very last sample that we loaded. So I'm just going to put that in. And it'll put it in at the root key of that sample. We'll wait for it to come back around and you'll hear that percussion loop start. Okay, so what I want to do is a 1-bar loop. So what I want to do is I want to put that in at the downbeat of every 1 bar. So I'm just going to scroll down and start making that happen. That's a cool vibe. Here, let's put that in a couple more times and we'll have it going the full 8 bars. That should do it there. Now, if I want to, like for example, bring that down in the mix a little bit, we just go back to the instrument parameter screen by pressing the number 2. We're in the arrangement screen, and if I press 2, we just go to the instrument parameter screen. I can turn on a low pass filter, kind of filter that back into the mix if I want, which I do. Bring the volume down a little bit, which is something that I want to do as well, so it's riding underneath or equal to the kick and not like being the foreground of the mix. How are we doing on volume level here? We doing okay? All right. I'd like to automate that percussion groove the same way that we automated the background atmosphere. I'm going to go over to the instrument parameters page, the instrument automation page, and I'm going to automate that low filter cutoff so that it's happening ever so gently. Maybe put that at about 15, so just a little tiny bit. We're filtering that percussion loop in the background and starting to do a little bit of movement. I'm going to do the same thing with the panning on it. I'm going to assign the panning movement to an LFO. I'm going to change the steps to 96, and I'm just going to bring that down to maybe like, I don't know, 15. So it's just ever so gently alive in the background and moving around a little bit. I think it's a little too low in the mix now, so I'm going to bring it up a tiny bit in the volume, keeping in mind that I am working on headphones, which is never quite as good as working on full studio monitors. So if my mix isn't 100% stellar, you know, I can always fix that after the fact when I start hearing it on the monitors. I would like some effects on that percussion loop as well, because the dub technos for me is really all about that, you know, getting the sounds into their own space, right? So I'm going to crank up the reverb on that percussion loop. Now we can start to just hear that reverb in the background. Very gently. You're probably only hearing that reverb if you're listening on headphones or proper monitor speakers. I'm going to also boost the delay amount up all the way, and I'm going to use that to help us set the global delay setting. I'm going to go over to the master, the global effects page, and click on the delay settings. I'm going to change that delay to a ping pong delay, and I'm going to sync that delay to the tempo of our project. And now I can adjust the rate of that until I like the way that it sounds. That's a little bit too like on the beat. I'm going to try 3/2 as the rate. I'm going to go with the rate of 2 on this one. Now I'm going to go back to the actual instrument parameters page for that percussion loop, hit more, and bring that delay way back in the mix. Now that I've got the rhythm of that delay set where I'd like it as the global delay for our project. So we've got just 3 samples so far. A kick loop, we've got the atmosphere loop, and we've got that percussion loop. So I'd like to get the chat involved a little bit in creating these. Wow, we got, looks like, I can't see how many people are watching right now, but let's assume that some people are watching. What do you think we should do next? Do you think we should add like some high frequency content, like a hi-hat? Or do you think I should start adding some dub chord stabs next? If anybody wants to help out and participate a little bit, now would be a great time to throw a comment in the chat. What do you think? A hi-hat or a chord sound over this groove? We got a vote for hats. Thanks for participating. We got Lawrence saying chords would be delightful. We're going to get there too, but I've got hats coming in first, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to click Shift and 2 to get us back into the loading menu. I'm going to pick an empty slot to load a sample into, and then we're just going to load some hats. I've got a whole folder that I've created of brand new hat loops in this dub spectrum pack. Let's go ahead and open that folder up. Let's scroll down till we get to some 110 beats per minute hat loops. These are 1-bar loops. Ooh, I like that one. That's hat loop number 13. We're going to go ahead and add that one to the project. Now I just need to go back over to the arrangement window here. I can press the shortcut of Shift and Insert to get us to the top. And now I just put this in every 1 bar. Might be a 2-bar loop. Let me just make sure that it's a 1 bar and not a 2-bar loop. Nope, it's just a 1-bar loop. So I'm going to go through and put that on the downbeat of every measure in our 8-bar loop here. So we've got some hats happening. Whoops. All right. And we're going to do kind of the same thing that we've been doing with the other sounds. We're going to give these hats a little bit of movement in the stereo field. Because if we're using stereo samples and the Tracker Mini can load stereo samples, let's get some movement happening in that stereo field, yeah? I'm going to be set to the panning, and I'm going to assign that to an LFO. I'm going to leave it at a 128 steps LFO, and just really subtly, I'm going to bring the amount of LFO to the panning up to maybe like 12. Hopefully you guys can read the screen of the Tracker Mini. Hey, we got Lo in the chat. What's happening, Lo? Thanks for tuning in. These are samples today from my brand new sound bank for the Tracker Mini. It's called Dub Spectrum, and it's not available yet, but it will be out very soon. It contains over 700 brand new samples that are dub techno themed, because you know I love the dub. And I've included thousands of other samples from my other sample packs and sound banks as well, for a total of over 4,000 samples and loops in this pack. Alright, let's go ahead and go back into the hi-hats. And let's add a little bit of reverb and delay to those. Let me hear what the delay sounds like on there. Oh yeah, because it's a ping-pong delay. I don't want it to be super affecting. Try 16 and negative 16 and negative 16 there. And let's also bring those hi-hats down in volume just a little bit. Alright, and remember I said that we can save while the pattern's playing, so if you're just sitting there vibing out, you don't have to lose your vibe with this when you're saving. We just go Shift and 3 and hit save. And it knows that I've already, given this project a name, and we can just save. So now there's no chance of losing the work that we're creating along the way. And now, let's go ahead and do what Lauren said and grab ourselves a nice chord stab. I'm going to go ahead and stop for one moment, and I'm going to select an empty slot to load this stab into. I'm going to go back into the main folder from Dub Spectrum, and here we have Dub Spectrum Dub Chord Stabs. This is a folder of 100 all new dub chord stabs. They're all in the key of F minor, which again, all of the sample content of this pack is in the key of F minor, so all of these pieces will sort of slot together. All you have to do is decide what you like, and everything is pretty much going to go together. So if I press play and start previewing some of these chord stabs, they have lots of different delay settings on them, lots of different vibes, lots of different, sort of texture amounts and stuff. You'll hear what I mean as we start scrolling through some of these samples. We're just going to find one that kind of fits the vibe that we've got started so far. I'm going to just scroll down randomly. Let's pick this one. There we go. We're done. That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. I'm going to click Add, and we're going to import that sample to the project. I'm going to go back to our arrangement screen. With these projects that I'm making for the sound bank, I've been using track 4 for bass a lot of the time. So we're going to put that chord stab on track 5, and I'm just going to put it on the downbeat of our pattern. I think I'm going to put it to happen every 4 bars on the downbeat. Alright, Now we're going to go into the instrument parameters on that chord stab and just max out the reverb. It's a little bit too loud, so I'm going to bring it down in the mix a little bit. I'm also going to crank up the delay on that chord stab. It's really giving us a nice vibe now. But it's a little bit static. It's the same exact hit every time. So we're going to do that same trick with the panning and the cutoff that we did with the other sounds. We're going to add a little modulation to the panning of this sound in the stereo field. Let's do that first. If I go to the instrument automation page, it's still set to panning. I can assign the panning to an LFO. By default, it's a triangle-shaped LFO, and by default, it's at 128 steps. All of that is good. I just want the amount not to be quite as dramatic as the default setting of 50, so I'm going to bring the amount down to 25. And now that chord stab is just moving a little bit in our stereo field. You won't hear that if you're listening on your phone, but if you're listening on a pair of headphones or some decent monitor speakers, these subtle automations in the panning and stuff really start to add up to a nice rich vibe. Let's go ahead and assign a low pass filter to that chord stab sound. Maybe set it to about 75 and bring up the resonance on that filter as well, low pass filter. Now if I can assign an LFO to the movement of that filter cutoff, LFO. It's a triangle-shaped LFO, so just a smooth, plain LFO. I'm going to set that to a setting of 96 steps and bring the amount down a little bit. I'd like to hear it a little more, so we'll bring the cutoff on that sound down just a little bit, just on the chord stab, so we can hear it. There we go. Start to actually move a little tiny bit. Thanks very much for that. Lo says that my samples are really well EQ'd. I spend so much time putting these sound banks together, and I really spend a lot of time thinking through what machine I'm going to save while I'm talking here. I really spend a lot of time thinking through what specific box they're going to go in. Not all of the boxes, specifically this one as well, have as many options as say something like an MPC Live, where you've got lots of different EQ plugins that you can load onto those tracks, or like Ableton, where you can do as much EQing as you want. This has a high pass, a low pass, or a band pass filter, and that's the amount of EQ you get. There's a global EQ, but that's not going to help the samples fit together. So as I'm creating the samples, I'm spending that time, when I'm putting the effects on and when I'm rendering them out and when I'm editing them, to make sure that they're pretty much EQ'd and as ready to use as the end user is going to need them to be ready to use for. So I really appreciate you saying that. All right, what let's do here is actually I'm going to stop the playback again, because we're going to get a little bit creative here. That main chord stab now is going through a low pass filter, but let's create a variation of that so we can have more than one of the exact same chord stab. I'm going to hit shift and the number 2 to get us back into our loading samples screen, but instead of loading a new sample, this time I'm just going to select that chord stab again. I'm going to hit the copy button, and I'm going to scroll down to the next available slot and hit shift copy, so that it literally just copies that same chord that same chord sample. So now I have it in 2 individual instrument slots, and I can affect it differently. So if I go back to the instrument parameters page, we can see that I've got the filter set to a low pass, but I can scroll down and assign that to a band pass, and this is now instrument number 6. So if I go back to the arrangement window, I can put in a second stab to kind of give a call and response, and I'll leave that main stab on the downbeat every 4 bars, and I'll put the new variation stab with a bandpass filter in somewhere in between there, and then we'll adjust the settings on that bandpass filter to get ourselves a little bit of a call and a response on this chord. Not sure what I've done wrong there, but I've done something wrong there. 5, 6. Oh, because the low pass filter is moving. Fantastic, actually. So we're just going to make... Yeah. There's our chord stab. Try to hear it from the beginning to get the rhythm, you know, where I want to put the response from the call. My gut says right at the beginning here, but I'm not sure if that's right or not. No, I think 1 more bar at least away. Not bar, but quarter bar. Yeah. Maybe not quite on the same beat as that first one. I'm going to now adjust the cutoff of that bandpass filter. We're going to get it sounding really groovy. That's too low. I think I'm just going to try lower just to make sure that's not what I want. It's not. We're going to go higher on that one. Okay. So we're adjusting the stab number 2, which is now a bandpass filter. That's more what I want. I'm going to bring the volume down on that, down a little bit. By default, because I copied the first chord stab, we already have that same automation happening on the second chord stab with the panning and with the filter movement. I'm going to take the filter movement down a little bit on the, and I'm going to bring the panning movement up a little bit on that second stab. Yeah. Yeah, that's more like it. Cool. So we've got a variation happening on the exact same chord stab now by assigning it to 2 different instrument tracks. I think I want to adjust the cutoff on the first downbeat stab just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and save while it's playing. I love that we can do that. Let's go ahead and add another new chord stab into the mix here so we can really get some play on these chords. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the loading files screen. And I'm going to pick an empty slot here to load a new sample into. And I'm going to stay in this same folder of dub chord stabs. I'm just going to scroll down randomly to maybe this one. That's not bad. But I want something, a little higher pitched like that one. In fact, let's just go with that one, right? I'm trying to show just how easy it is to use these samples together because I created them to be used together. Let's go back to the track arrangement page. And I'm going to try to listen for maybe when we want another chord sample to happen. I'm going to try right here, and I'm going to stop it and restart it so that I can hear if I've got the timing of this new stab sounding what I want it to be. No, I think I wanted a couple of steps away from there. Let's try that again. 2, 3, 4. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. And I think the second one goes there. We're going to listen through and make sure I got them where I want them. I maybe want that second one to move a little bit. Let's try here instead. We're going to adjust the volume on it because it's way too loud right now. I just want to get the placement right. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Bring the volume on it down. And I think we're also going to assign a high pass filter to that new sample. Maybe put a little resonance on it. And just crank up the reverb and the delay on it. Just maybe to full blast. Ooh, that's vibey. Yeah, we're just going to leave that maxed out, I think. We're going to assign a little bit of automation to the panning of that new stab, like we've been doing with all the other stabs. Yeah, cool. And I think we're going to assign a little bit of automation to the high pass filter on that new sound as well, so that there's just a little bit more extra movement happening there. And I think the volume on that third stab is a little hot still. Not quite sure on the headphones, but I think so. Hey, what's happening, Paul? Thanks for tuning in. I'm showing today, we're creating some dub techno using a brand new sound bank that I've put together for the Tracker Mini. The thing is that these are just samples though, so they'll work in any hardware sampler or any desktop DAW that loads stereo samples, like the Akai samplers, like the 1010 Black Box, like Ableton Live or Cubase, or any DAW on the iPad as well, like Beatmaker 3 or like Logic on the iPad. The pack is called Dub Spectrum, but it's not available yet. I'm just working on, I was going to make some more patterns for this, and I figured we might as well do that live and, you know, show some people what these samples can do and how easy they are to work with, not just in a device like the Tracker Mini, which is what the pack is for. So there's going to be a lot of included patterns. I played a few of those patterns at the beginning of the stream, and we'll play a few more of the included patterns in a little while as well. But the samples themselves will load into any sampler that loads stereo samples. There's over 700 brand new samples in the Dub Spectrum pack, and there's over 4,000 samples that are included in total in the pack, because I've collected samples from my other dub packs into this big huge pack as well. So we've just saved, and I like the way we've got this going so far. It needs a little bit more something still, and we've got some room inside these tracks to add some other sounds as well. I don't have anything on track 6 yet, and I don't have anything on track 7 yet. Yeah, they will definitely load in the Polyend Play Plus, although there's a lot of loops here, and the loops don't really work as well in the Plus because you don't have the same tools that we have in the Tracker for like slicing them up. And when I press play in the Tracker, everything stops. But if you have a loop loaded into the Play or the Play Plus and you press stop, those loops just keep playing out all the way, and it can kind of get a little frustrating to have to double tap the master level button on the Play or the Play Bus to get those loops to stop playing all the time in the Play. But they will load in the Play Plus, for example, because that loads stereo samples, and there are plenty of one-shots included here too. So if you don't want to work with loops at all, they will absolutely work in the Play Plus. All right, so I think over this we could try to get really creative maybe. Let's go back to the loading screen. and I'm going to pick an empty slot to load the next sound into. Let's go into the, let's do that. Let's go into the Dean's Dub Bunker pack. Now this is a wave format sample pack that I've been selling on my website, Electronisounds, for the last couple of years. And all of the loops are at the tempo of 110 and in the key of F minor. So depending on what we pick, it should be pretty easy to find something that goes along with what we've created already. I'm going to go into the effects loops folder here on the Dean's Dub Bunker pack. And we're just going to scroll around and listen to some of these loops here. Maybe this one. Very loud when we're previewing the sounds, so I can adjust the preview level down quite a bit if I want to, and then go over and preview that sample again. I really like the way that sounds over the groove we've got, so let's just go ahead and I don't even need to scroll around. Well, for fun, let's maybe scroll around. Really easy to find cool stuff, you know, when they're made to go together. But let's go back to that first one that I liked so well. It's called Code Talker. Is that the one? No, it was Cave Boy. Yeah, that's super cool. Let's add that to our project and get that loaded in on track 6. Now it's a loop, so it's really easy to just scroll over to track 6, hit shift and insert to go to the very top of that loop. By default, the tracker knows you want to put in the most recent thing you've loaded into it. Whoa, that's way too loud. So we'll bring the volume on that sound down quite a bit. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. It's a 4-bar loop that we've loaded. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in on the downbeat of every 4 bars. There we go. I'm going to bring the volume on it down again. It's pretty loud. We want to tuck it in the back, not leave it in the foreground. I want like the dub stabs to be more the foreground here. I also think we can low pass filter this new percussion sound. Tuck it back in the mix a little more. Yeah, and bring the volume down on it still even more. I'm going to add some reverb and delay to that new percussion loop because I really want to create that thick, vibey atmosphere. Yeah, getting there. We're tucking it back and getting it seated in the mix. Let's give it a little bit more movement like we've been doing to all of these sounds, right? Let's go back into the instrument automation page and let's adjust the panning, assign the panning of this new sound to an LFO. Give it a little bit of movement in the stereo field. Let's also adjust the cutoff, assign an LFO to the cutoff. And maybe just really subtly, like set that to like a 15, so it's just ever so gently, the sounds are kind of just doing this now. Yeah, that's cool. Hey, we got Inky the Cat in the chat. What's happening, Inky? Thanks for tuning in. We got Stony in the chat. What's happening, Stony? So I still have one track empty in this particular pattern. I'm going to go ahead and save here while I'm chatting it up. And we've got that track empty, so definitely you can load something else into this pattern still. I have a folder of ride loops. I'm kind of thinking maybe get that high-end percussion sound, ding, 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 kind of thing going in this pattern. But the options are limitless. You know, we could just add more percussion. We could try to add another melodic piece of content. We could add like a clap, you know. Let's listen to this. If anybody has any specific ideas of what we should add, just drop that in the chat. Maybe we'll go with that. Should we add a ride? Should we add a clap? Should we try to add more melodic content? I could also try to add another vinyl noise sound over the top of this to get it even darker and crustier sounding. I mean, the options are just whatever our imagination, you know, brings to us, right? Basically what I want with these patterns, you know, is I definitely want to where when I take out that kick drum, that we have a really nice evolving sort of 8-bar pattern happening in the background that vibes on its own. 1, 2, 3, bring the kick back. Hey, we got DJ Effects all in the chat. What's happening, John? Thanks for tuning in. I'm trying to get the chat to participate a little bit in what you guys think we should add over this, like a clap or a ride sound, maybe that high-end percussion, ding, 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 ding. Or another piece of melodics, or maybe like a vinyl noise again to thicken that, you know, layer of vinyl sound. Anybody have any thoughts on what we should add? Got a lot of, you know, it's a pretty full pattern, but we do have that empty track 7, and we should definitely utilize that. Okay, we got a vote for a ride. Thanks, John. I appreciate you participating. Let's go back to the loading screen here, and let's see what we can come up with. I'm just going to pick an empty slot in the instruments to load into, and all we need to do go to the main folder of the Dub Spectrum pack, and the main folder, come on, cool. And now we can find the folder of Dub Spectrum ride loops. I can go into that folder, and we can check out some ride loops. That's not bad. Let's go through a few more. Maybe the preview on these is a little bit louder than it should be. What I'm listening for is just the tone of that cymbal, right? That's pretty nice. Ooh, that's really nice too. Maybe a little too high almost. I really like the way that's adding some texture to the sound. It's kind of not a traditional ride sound. Let's add that loop in. That's ride loop number 13. Importing that to the project. We just go back over to the arrangement screen. And I believe the ride loops are like 2-bar loops. Yeah, so we just add that in every 2 bars on track 7 here. I can bring the volume down on that because I know it's probably going to want to be tucked in the back a little bit. Ooh, that's nice. I can add a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay to that to kind of help seat it in the same acoustic space as the rest of our sounds, but not too much because we don't want to just put a wash of high frequency content in the mix. Just tuck it back in the mix a little more. Let's do a little bit of that automation on it that we've been doing with pretty much all of the sounds except for the kick drum. Let's give it some automation on the panning. So it's just really, I'm going to just put that at 10. So it's just really gently moving a little bit in the stereo field. Maybe bring it down in the mix just the tiniest bit. So we're just tucking it back. I really want those chord stabs to be like the main focus here. And again, I am mixing on these headphones, so the mix levels could be a little bit off. But remember, we can save while it's playing. So let's do that. Shift and 3 and saving the project. I really like the way that sounds. So it's just that simple to create a really nice and lush and robust sounding dub techno groove with these sounds. And for those of you who've been hanging out for most of this, you can see we're not doing anything complicated with the tracker. We're basically just placing samples on the grid, giving them a little bit of extra movement with an LFO to panning and a little bit of LFO to the filter. We're giving them quite a bit of reverb and a little bit of delay to a lot of the sounds as well. In the beginning, I changed the global space amount. That's like just a global kind of stereo width setting. I set that to 3 to get us just a little bit wider sound than, you know, leaving that plain. And that's all we've done really. We haven't done any like wavetable synthesis or granular synthesis. I didn't do any like random pattern creation or any of the, you know, tricks that this box is capable of. We didn't lock any sounds to change on the, you know, the tracks, or really hardly anything complicated at all. We're basically just loading samples and assigning them to spots on the grid here. Now, if this was a song that we were working on, we would, you know, copy this pattern into a blank pattern and maybe make some changes, start worrying about making an intro, some change ups, maybe like a breakdown pattern. But I want it for sure to where I can remove the kick and have the pattern still grooving on its own, right? And have it filling a space, like an acoustic space, right? Right, keeping the rhythm there, I love it. And bring it. Alright, so it's just that simple. Using the samples that are in this pack, the Dub Spectrum pack, you can create a groove, and let's see, how long have we been going? Maybe about an hour? But I've been talking you through every step of the way, so we could definitely have done that faster. Let me go ahead and show you guys a few more of the included patterns that I've already created using these same samples to show you, you know, how different some of these grooves are. Obviously, you know, we're still trying to stay rooted in that vibe of dub techno, but not everything is going to be just 110. You've got other, you know, samples here. It's over 4,000 samples to dig through in this pack. Oh, I love this one. Completely different vibe, right? Got a different tempo too. 140 beats per minute. I made this one. But still got that dubby vibe, that atmosphere, right? And like I was saying before, I really want to be able to mute that kick drum.
Bring the pressure.
Used a non-traditional sound for the snare here. It was a vocal sample that we heard that's got a chance setting assigned to it. So maybe it will trigger, maybe it won't, right?
Bring the pressure.
Oh, I really like that one a lot. That one's got a lot of its own personality to it. And that's the point of these, is that I just really want to show that you can create a lot more than just 4 on the floor dub techno at 110 beats per minute. Just, you have to just get in there and be creative with the sounds and the way that you use them. Here's another one of the included patterns. These are all the patterns that I'm including are just like 8-bar patterns. You know, if you're using the pack and you find something that you like and you want to turn it into a song, just copy that pattern to another pattern or two, start making some variations, loading some other sounds, you know, doing your own thing. All of the patterns that are going to be included in the Dub Spectrum pack are royalty free and yours to do with what you want to use in your commercial music or otherwise. Another vibe that's not 4 on the floor, right? Got a more sassy kind of feeling to this one. Thanks, Lo. I appreciate that. But, you know, there's definitely a consistent thread to these. A lot of them, you know, feel like they're coming off of like an old gritty record, and they all have that sort of dub techno, you know, vibe with the chord stabs. Let's try another one of these patterns that I've created previously, and then we'll probably try to create another one from scratch today, but I'll approach it in a different way than what we did creating the first one. A more traditional dub techno vibe on this one with the 4 on the floor. Got a lot of dark stuff in the background. But lots of chord stabs, kind of doing call and response, right? Alright, let me load one more of the existing patterns that I've already made. I'm trying to find a specific one that I think has a really distinct personality all its own. And it might be this one here. Let's hope I'm right. Let's find out. I'm not. This is for that traditional dub techno vibe again. Really big stabs, you know. I really do want to find that other one if we can. Let's try pattern number 6 of the included patterns that I've already created. I'm looking to create at least 25 patterns that'll be included with this particular pack. I'm not sure if I'm going to go above that or not. We just created pattern 19 in real time here on the stream. That's nice too, but not the one I'm looking for. Should have written the number down, of course. And another one that doesn't have that traditional 4 on the floor vibe. It's got a really, really deep kick drum. And really chilled vibes on this one. Got that nice ride in the background. Keeping those dub chords in the foreground. I know I said I was only going to load one more, but let's try just one more. I'm going to load pattern number 5 of the included patterns, and we'll see if this is that one that I was looking for specifically. And then we'll make another pattern from scratch while we're here on the stream. It's not the one I'm looking for. What I mean though about you take away the drums and they really have an atmosphere that can stand on their own though. Alright, Let's make another pattern from scratch while we're on the stream today. I'm going to start by hitting New Project, and we're just going to double check that I'm up to pattern number 20 so I can save it correctly. Yeah, I just did dub spectrum 19 here on the stream. So we're going to go Save, and we're going to go select the right folder, and it's there. So this gets a little bit tedious for those who aren't familiar with doing things with hardware, because you have to sit here and do it manually, with each individual letter. But this is going to be called dub. Put a space in here. Dub spectrum. And again, normally I'm just sitting using this with my hands, got my feet up. It's really fun to use. Let's see here. Dub spectrum space, and this is going to be pattern number 20. Let's do it. Oh, I did a misspelling. It's not spectrum, so let's fix that real fast. Dub spectrum space 20. All right, and we're going to go Save. So again, for those who might not have heard me say it a million times already, there's over 700 brand new dub techno themed samples in this pack that are not in any of my other packs, but I've compiled a lot of other samples, including things like the entire sample pack from the Erica Sense Techno system, Eurorack system as well. I mean, just countless other things, other full entire sample packs. Some of my Polyend Play sample packs are in this pack as well. So for a total of over 4,000 samples that are sort of dub techno themed. And let's go ahead and give it a go. We're going to start loading a sample from scratch, and let's see here what we're going to do to start this one off. I started the last one with a kick drum, so maybe we'll start this one off with a dub chord stab, just right from the jump. Pick one of these chord stabs from the folder and then start building up sort of an atmosphere with that. And we won't add the kick drum first. We'll add that a little bit later. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the very end of these new dub chord stabs. We'll start with number 100. And I'm just going to start I'm going to bring the volume up on the preview of these a little bit. And there we go. That one's got a different vibe than what... Ooh, I love that little ending thing too. Hold on, let me think about this. I like that little boo-hoo at the end of that sound. I really like that. I promised myself I wasn't going to try to get super complicated on the stream, because you never know where that's going to take you, and there's no safety net here on these live streams. But shoot, let's just go for it, shall we? I'm going to load that stab into the project, and what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to single out that little tiny bit at the end, that kind of like sound per se. So if we go back into our arrangement screen, I've usually been liking to start the chords on track 5, so I'm going to go over to track 5. I'm going to press record to get us into the live arrangement mode, and I'm just going to start that sample playing, and it's by default, this is going to put us into a 2-bar loop. And what I want to do is I want to use one of these effects commands that we didn't get into at all on the first pattern. And I'm going to try to, I'm not going to edit the sample and try to resave it and all that. I'm just going to try to decide where I want the start point of that sample to be, so that I can really highlight that kind of sound at the end of this sample. So I'm going to hold down effects 1. Now I can choose from any of these things in the list to affect the sample that is playing on this step, right? I can adjust the volume of it, the panning of it, the microtune, the glide. I can affect the tempo. I'm not really sure what that would be, like the global tempo or something. I can put some swing on the sample. I can micro move it on the grid. Like if you're a hip hopper and you really need that Dilla swing, you can do that here. I can adjust the gate length of it, like how long it's going to hold the note down, all that stuff. I can put a chance effect on it, so like it has a chance of playing or not playing. I could put a roll on it so that it goes, any of that kind of stuff. what we want is we want the position setting. And if I leave that at 0 and press play, it just plays that sample from the very beginning of the sample. But if I hold down my effects 1 and I start, whoops, not holding it down, but as long as I have it selected, up, there it is. Now it's starting, I put the position at 40, and we're hearing just that little end piece of the sample. So it's really quiet in the mix and all that, and we're going to adjust that instead. Not instead, but in just a moment. But what I want to do is the same thing we did at the beginning of the last project. I want to take the global space setting on this project, and I want to turn that up to 3. I'm also going to adjust the reverb to make it a lot bigger than it was by default. We're going to put the size at 80, we're going to put the damping at 40, we're going to put the pre-delay at 60, and we're going to put the diffusion, oh what the hell, all the way up to 100. Now I'm just going to go over to that page of where the sample is residing. I'm going to put the overdrive on it, maybe at 2, and I'm going to max out the reverb so I can hear what that sounds like. Now when I press play, it's giving us a lot more of an atmosphere than just a little hit. And we've gotten a little bit louder in the mix from that overdrive. Cool. Now if I were to go over to the global, mixer page, I can see how loud that is. Make sure that I don't have it, too quiet or too loud. Oh, hey, thanks very much, Stoney. Stoney says, I don't need a safety net. That's just us. I appreciate that. All right. I like the way that sounds, but what I want to do is I want it to trigger half as often. So we're going to make the length of the pattern into a 64-step pattern right off the jump. 64 steps. And I also want to assign a lot of delay to that stab. So let's max out the delay happening on that stab, and then I can go to the global settings of the global delay. We have a global reverb and a global delay that I can send the sounds to. I'm going to turn that ping pong on the delay so it's a more stereo delay. I'm going to put the sync of that delay on, and I'm going to bring the feedback of that up and the filter down. And I'm going to adjust maybe the rate to 3/2 this time. Bring the feedback up, maybe to 75. Maybe even 80 on the feedback. So it's really having a lot of feedback on itself. Maybe even really extreme and go to 85. Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, we'll bring the reverb size up to 90. So it's just huge, right? Oh, what the hell? Push it. 91. Great. Let's save what we've done here so that no matter what happens, we don't lose our work. I'm a chronic oversaver for those of you who already know me, and I encourage you all to be chronic oversavers as well. Not that the Tracker Mini is crashing. It actually hasn't ever crashed for me, but you just never know. If you do something wrong maybe and you can't figure out what you did and you'd love to go back a couple of steps, but maybe you can't figure that. I mean, any number of reasons. It's always good to be a chronic oversaver. And I love that we could save while this is still playing. Now I need to decide what to add over this sound. So we're going into the sample load page. And I think we're going to go back into that Dub Spectrum chord stabs folder and maybe find a different chord stab and have sort of a call and response on these sounds. Instead of starting at the end this time in the folder, we'll start randomly towards the middle. They're all gonna, pretty much sound okay because it's all meant to work together. Hold the phone. Yeah, that's the one right there. So I'm going to add that to the project. And we're going to go back to the arrangement page. And I'm going to put that in when I hear where it goes here. Down. I think it goes here. It'll be easier to tell once we get a rhythm part for it to play off again. Maybe the next one down, actually. Let's try that. But what I want to do is on the new stab, I want to just douse it in. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. And a bunch of reverb, too. Maybe bring it down in the mix a little. Oh, yeah. What let's do is put a little bit of movement on that second stab, like we did with a lot of the sounds in the first pattern that we made. Let's go ahead and assign a filter to that sound. Maybe a low pass filter, maybe bring it down to like 75, right? So that we can adjust, not only put an LFO, not only on the panning of the second stab, but also on the filter cutoff. So I'm going to put an LFO, triangle-shaped LFO to the panning, to set it to 128 steps, and we're just moving it a little bit back and forth in the stereo field, maybe a little bit more. I'm going to go to the cutoff. We're going to make that an LFO. I'm going to set that to 96 steps. And I just want to listen to that stab. Yeah, hear how it's changing? Yeah, awesome. I think we're going to give a little bit of that same sort of vibe to the first stab as well. I'm going to put a low pass filter on it, just like we did with the sound that we just worked with. Yeah, and then maybe bring the resonance up on it. Cool. And I'm going to put an LFO on the panning of that first stab, just really gently. Put a 20 LFO, 20 amount, and we'll do the same thing with the cutoff, make that a 96, and just gently here, maybe 20 on that as well. These are things that are just very subtly starting to add up in the background to the vibe. I'm going to save what we've created so far. I think to start feeling the groove now, we're going to maybe start trying to get some sort of, percussion sound happening. So if I hit Shift and 2 to go back to the loading screen, I can pick a slot to load the sample into, and then we can scroll about through a different folder here. Maybe we'll go to the percussion loops folder, the dub spectrum percussion loops folder, and try to find some sort of a percussion loop to get a backbone happening and some sort of rhythm happening on this groove. We're going to scroll down a little bit. Hey, what's happening, Cresshead? What's happening, Ron? Oh, I appreciate that tip. Ron says to find that step that he's looking for, he'll press play while it's in green mode, so that way the screen is moving, and then he'll just stop it right when it's at that step. That's a great tip, Ron. So we're looking for a percussion loop to add here. I'm just going to scroll down. There's a lot of percussion loops that I've created for this pack. I'm going to bring the volume up on that just a little bit more on the preview. Whoops. It scrolled me to the top of the folder again. Let's scroll down a little bit. Ooh, I like that one. But let's keep scrolling. Ooh, I like that too. Let's go ahead and load that one up and put a low pass filter on it immediately. That's percussion loop 29. We're going to go ahead and just load that into the project. And actually, before we start affecting it, let's go ahead and put it on a track. We can shift and insert to get to the top of our pattern. I think that's just a 1-bar loop. So we're going to put that in. Oh, I see. I don't have the tempo set yet, and we want to set it to 110. So I'm going to hit Shift and 1 to go into the song menu. I'm going to hold tempo and tap the big down twice to get us into 110. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And we're going to get that loop in on all 4. We can only have a 4-bar pattern so far. I'd like to work with an 8-bar pattern. So I'm going to hit more, and I'm going to hit duplicate pattern, so it just stretches it out to a 128 beats, 8-bar pattern. And now we're going to put a low-pass filter on that percussion loop that we just added. We're going to tuck it back in the mix. We're going to put a lot of reverb on it and some delay on it. So hear how it's just behind the chord stabs now? It's not really writing at the same level as the chord stabs, but it's just kind of a level behind them, right? It's a little more than I wanted on the reverb. Yeah, that's vibey. All right, we're going to go ahead and save what we've created so far. Yeah, cool. Let's go ahead and find ourselves a kick drum here. There's a lot of different folders we could go into for kick loops or for kick drum samples, but the samples that I've created in the Dub Spectrum pack, there's a whole folder of kick drum loops that has kind of a reverb pumping effect on them built into the sample. And those are really easy to work with. They're all at 110 beats per minute. Let's go find one of those that we can add to this project. I'm going to go to the Dub Spectrum Kick Loops with Verb Pump folder. Hey, what's happening, Les? Thanks for tuning in. We're chilling out today, making some dub techno. I'm using a sample pack that I'm working on and just about finished with for the Polyend Tracker Mini. It's called Dub Spectrum. And right now we're going to look for a kick loop to add to this groove that we've got going. Just looking for the kind of vibe that I want here. Well, that's not bad, it's 24. It's a little bigger than I want. It's a little more aggressive than I want. It's not quite right. Ooh, that's exactly what I want. Yeah, nice and dark and tucked away. Let's grab that one. That's kick loop number 29. I think that might have been the same one we just used in the last pattern, but that's okay. I'm not sure. And even if it is, it doesn't matter. Those are just 1-bar loops, so I'm just going to put that in on the downbeat of every bar in our 8-bar pattern. Yeah, there we go. That's exactly the vibe I'm after. Whoops. Ooh, yeah. I think I even want that darker still. So I think we can assign a low pass filter to that kick loop. And I'm just going to bring the cutoff on that down just a little bit. Checking the level I'm sending to the stream. Can you guys hear that groove okay? Am I still loud enough? Lo says, how do we achieve that tucked away effect? I'm sending it to a low pass filter, which just removes the high frequency content to that sound. And that really allows us to kind of tuck things away back in the mix, rather than have them being in the foreground of the mix. Let's see what happens if we add a little bit of delay to that kick drum. It might not be what we want. Let's just find out. Yeah, that's not what we want. So I'm going to not have any delay on that kick drum. But we've got a kick drum, a percussion loop, and a couple of chord stabs here. I think it'd be nice if we started to get some of that vinyl grit happening in the background and sort of filling out the atmosphere level of our groove. So we're going to save. I love that we can save while it's still playing. I'm going to hit Shift and 2 to go into the loading menu. I'm going to pick an empty slot. We're going to go ahead and go to the Dean's Noise Candy pack. This is the full Dean's Noise Candy sample pack from Electronisounds that's included here. It just has lots of different noise textures in it. Here's some miscellaneous textures. I like that one. It's just kind of like a tape hiss almost in the background. But I'm looking for more like a vinyl noise sound here. I really like that one too. I have some, in fact, some nature. I have some nature sound beds in this pack as well. Let's hear one. I love to have those kind of bird sounds in the background to give like a sort of a vibe, like a place, you know. There's a noise, nature noise that has some like, you know, drifting stream kind of sound in the background. But really what I want on this is just like a vinyl noise. That's pretty good right there. That's the one. That's vinyl noise number 12 from the Dean's Noise Candy Pack. That sounds really good. So I'm loading that to the project. And like I've been doing with these patterns that I'm including, I'm going to put that on track number 8. So if I hit Shift and Insert, we go to the very top of the 8 bars. And I'm just going to let that trigger the sample. And we're going to let it play and see if will play for the full 8 bars or whether we need to trigger it twice. So now I'm listening to that vinyl noise to see if it cuts off before it triggers back around. Still going. But it cut off a little bit before the end. So what I'm going to do there, I'm just going to go a little bit further down the pattern, and I'm going to trigger that noise to start again. Now, we're going to add a little bit of reverb and delay just to that vinyl noise, just for the sole purpose of kind of getting it in the same acoustic space as the rest of the sounds we're working with. I'm going to bring it down, whoops, not quite that far down in the mix, and I'm going to put a high pass filter on it, which is going to remove any potential low frequencies that might be happening in that vinyl noise. So we're just, again, using another filter to sort of tuck it back in the mix, and the volume as well. Alright, let's save what we've got going so far. We've got a really cool little vibe happening here. Alright, and I'm going to go Shift and 2 to go back to the loading screen so we can load something else to put over the top of this. Trying to think of where I want to go here. I have a folder of sounds that I've recorded out of the Prophet Rev 2 synthesizer. Mostly chord stabs and pads. Let's go into that folder. See if we can't maybe find another chord stab to add to this, what we've got going already. That's cool. Ooh, that might just be it right. I think that might be it right there. Yeah, I really like that. Let's grab that. That's a F minor chord stab number 6 that I recorded from the Prophet Rev 2 synthesizer. Just gonna add that to the project. Hey, thanks everyone. Thanks for hanging out on these streams. I really appreciate you being here. Alright, let's see about where we want to add that now. I think I'm gonna use the same track that we've got our existing chord stabs on. I think I want to put it right there. I'm going to put it in one more time as well, but I'm going to let the loop play through. Nope, I want it another step down. Let's change that. I'm going to bring the volume on the new stab down, and we're going to do that automation on the panning that we've been doing to lots of the sounds here, so that we've got some movement on that new stab in the stereo field. Yeah, I'm going to add a lot of reverb and a lot of delay to that new stab to get it sort of in the same acoustic space that our rest of our sounds are in. Maybe bring it down in the mix a little still. Yeah, I like the way that sounds. Maybe even bring the panning amount up so that it moves a little more in the stereo field. And let's do that same exact process one more time. Let's add another stab that we can use to call in response to all of these stabs to really build up that techno texture. Let's add another stab from the Prophet Rev 2 synthesizer. Ooh, I like this one. Maybe not quite right. Like that one. It's got a higher pitch sort of vibe than what we're working with currently. Let's add that one in. That's stab number 62 for the Prophet Rev folder. And let's go up to the top here and find a nice place to put that stab in. I'm going to want to get my sort of vibe happening, my rhythm vibe. So let me just hear that from the downbeat. Right there, maybe. Let the loop play through and find out if I've placed it where I want it. I think I want it to happen before that still. Just try to get into the vibe and see if it hits where my brain kind of wants it to hit, right? Hey, we got the Crazy Wabbit in the chat. What's happening, my friend? I'm going to add some extra delay and reverb to that new stab that we just added. And tuck it back in the mix a little bit. We're going to give it a high pass filter. Maybe set the cutoff to 45 and the resonance to around 15. Here comes the new stab. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to get some automation happening on the panning of that new sound. Just a little bit of subtle movement on all of these sounds really adds up to a texture that starts to feel alive, right? Let's go ahead and save what we've done so far while I answer a really difficult question from Les in the chat. Les asks, what is my preference, the Polyend Tracker or the Dirty Wave Mate? Now, I'm not exactly sure what the Mate is. I love the Dirty Wave Mate. I absolutely love it. It has different, some different features that the Tracker doesn't have. Like some built-in synthesizers, for example. But the workflow is quite a bit different in that what you're creating in the Mate is you're creating like individual patterns for every single sound, and then you're arranging those patterns on the grid. Whereas with the Tracker Mini and the Tracker version 1, you're directly arranging your sounds on the grid. You don't have to create like a pattern first. And there's benefits and, maybe not great things about both of those workflows. But I really find that the Tracker Mini and the original Tracker workflow is really just like organic and easy, and I never find myself thinking about, okay, now if I want the hi-hat to change, I'll need to create another pattern for that hi-hat so that it can have the change in that pattern. But then the original hi-hat pattern is going to be this number, and then the new, it gets a little bit intricate, the Dirty Wave Mate. It's also smaller and a little bit more portable. So like if you're really looking for something to put in your shirt pocket per se, the Tracker Mini doesn't, allow you to do that. It's a little bigger. But the Tracker Mini is also battery powered, and it also, loads stereo samples just like the Dirty Wave Mate. So to answer that question, I really like both of these devices. A lot is the thing. I think they're, great and fun to work with. I like anything that has a sample-based workflow. Even though the Mate does have synthesizers inside it, I really don't use those, all that often because I really love to work with samples. I find this a little bit easier to work with than the Mate, if I had to say which one is easier or more difficult, but I don't necessarily think that one is specifically better than the other. I don't really subscribe to that. They're just a little bit different from each other. All right, let's hear what we've got so far and try to add some more sound to this pattern. Yeah, we need like an upbeat kind of, maybe an upbeat hi-hat or something to start tying the rhythm together. So if I hit Shift and 2 to go into the loading menu, if I pick an empty slot to load a sample in, and then I go over to the included folders here, I have a sample pack, another full sample pack that's included in this pack is the Velvet Carbon Techno pack that I made a few years ago. And we're just going to go into that pack. We're going to go into the Sounds folder. We're going to go into the Drums folder. And I'm going to try to find a hi-hat one-shot this time that we can load here from this pack. I'm just going to play the pattern in the background so when I'm previewing the sounds, we can choose a sound that kind of suits the vibe. I like that one. It's closed hi-hat, saturated 909B from the Velvet from the Velvet Carbon Techno pack. Say that 5 times fast. We're just going to add that closed hi-hat sample to the mix. We're going to go back to the arrangement screen, and I'm going to put that in on track 3. I'm going to hit Shift and Insert to go to the top of the pattern, and I'm just going to start manually punching that in on the offbeat. Again, the Tracker Mini, just by default, will start putting in the sample you've loaded last. So I don't have to choose what instrument I want to put in as long as I'm using the last sample that I've loaded. If I wanted to choose what instrument I'm putting in, I would just hold the instrument down, and then I can choose from any of the instruments in the project to include on that step. You can put any instrument on any step of your pattern. Doesn't have to be on the same track, although that, makes a lot more sense in the long run if you're putting similar sounds on the same track, But say if we wanted to add a clap as the next thing to add to this, I could put that clap sound on the same track that I'm adding this offbeat hi-hat because they're not hitting at the same, at the same step. In fact, maybe we'll do that so that I can show you what I mean. This hi-hat's pretty loud, so we're going to be turning it down in volume here. Maybe adding a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay. A little bit of delay there is giving our hi-hat kind of like a backbeat sort of feel. Still a little loud in the mix, so we'll turn it down. I really want to keep those chord stabs and textures as the foreground and keep a lot of the other sounds in the background. I'm going to go ahead and put a low pass filter on that hi-hat and just shave off a little bit of the high frequency content from that hi-hat as well. And I am listening on headphones right now, so don't judge me if I'm getting the mix a little screwy, but let's go ahead and save there. Thanks, Les. Ron asks another great question. Do I like the original tracker interface more than the Mini? I don't. I don't really have a preference per se. It's nice to be able to use the Mini just handheld. I keep, stressing it. I'll put my feet up, because it's nice to be able to just lean back in the chair rather than be hovered over the gear all the time. I have horrible posture because I'm always like hovered over the gear on the desk. But with the Tracker Mini, I can really just hold it in my hands and use it like you would a Game Boy. I've heard people say that they miss the jog wheel. I haven't experienced any personal missing of the jog wheel. A lot of people say they miss the buttons on it, the pads per se, but I just don't. I haven't had any problems working with the Mini in that respect. And if you want to say have some pads to work with, you can just plug in like a MIDI keyboard to the MIDI in port on the front here of the Tracker Mini and still play, your sounds or your loop slices. We haven't done any of that today, but that's one of the things that the Tracker Mini excels at as well. Is you can take a loop that you load into it and chop that up into different slices and then play those slices back in different orders. You can do, we're doing it really basic today, just really standard basic loading samples and putting them on the grid. Nothing fancy at all. But yeah, I really like both. I just love anything that loads stereo samples. In my opinion, is going to have a leg up over something that's limited to mono only samples. A lot of people say, well, the Beatles worked in mono, so you can work in mono. That was like the fucking 60s, man. I mean, for people to still be banging on about that argument like 60 years later is just ridiculous to me. Yes, I know, I feel strongly about it, and the fact that I'm cursing on the stream. That's how strongly I feel about the Beatles argument. You can work in mono, son. Look, I'm old too. I love the Beatles, but that music sounds old. It sounds 60 years old. But we're not trying to make music that is 60 fucking years old. We're trying to do something new. And stereo samples sound big and lush and wide. And mono samples literally have half the audio information as a stereo sample. So, being able to load full stereo samples and get that nice, lush stereo width in our sounds, it's going to be a leg up over like recording in those days. Keep in mind that that was really limiting even for the Beatles, and that their producers and technicians created a lot of new recording techniques to make their music sound good back in those days. It wasn't like, this is mono and we love it. It was like, this is what we can do, and let's push it as hard and as far as we absolutely can with the technology available to us at the time. You know what I'm saying? All right. Don't take away that I'm dissing the Beatles, because I would never diss the Beatles, okay? So, I think what we're going to try to add to this now is maybe like a really low bass. To kind of help tie this rhythm together. And a lot of the patterns that I've been creating with this dub spectrum pack, I've been putting a bass or a low frequency sound on track 4. Another thing we could do if we didn't want to load like a bass sound, so we could load a low tom sound. I have a whole folder of toms to pick through. Again, over 4,000 samples in total in this pack. There's everything you need to write any, basically any style, from classic dub techno to more experimental stuff. But let's go ahead and see if we can't find a sub bass that sounds good with what we've created so far. I'm going to press Shift and 2 to go into the sample loading page. And I'm going to scroll down to an empty slot. I hope we're still in focus there on the stream so you can see what's happening on the screen. I'm going to go back up to the main folder in the dub spectrum pack. We're going to go up to the top here. I've got a folder of bonus sub bass sounds. These are just some sub basses that I've collected from my various other sample packs. that might be useful when writing dub techno. I've got some in lots of different, root notes. We're writing in F, so I'm going to go ahead and start, trying to find something that's in F so we can just use it really easily. That's perfect. There's a nice sub bass in the root note of F. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the project. It's very loud, so we're going to bring it down quite a bit before I start putting it in to the track. We're going to put it in on track 4. And it's a long sound, and I'd like it to not play like in its entirety, which most of the samples will just play their full length of the sample when you just load it by default. I think I'm going to put an off command here. I've been having a little difficulty getting the actual sample off command to work in the tracker. So how I've been getting around that is I just put in another note, and then I use the effects slot to select volume, and I leave that at 0. And then what happens is that it's going to play that next sample, but it's going to play it at a volume of 0, thus cutting off what we hear from the sample playing before it. So that's just kind of allowing me to adjust the length of time exactly where I want that bass sound to stop. I think maybe one before it still. So I'm going to copy that note. I'm going to put it one beforehand. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. And so I'm going to start on the downbeat. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to copy that series of notes that's triggering the sub bass. I'm going to hit copy. And then shift and copy where I want to put that in again. And I'm going to put that in 4 times in our 8-bar pattern. So every other bar, we're going to get that bass happening. Probably your phone is rumbling in your hand if you're listening on a phone speaker. Oop, that's not quite right. I did something wrong there. Oh, I see what I've done wrong. So we're going to, let's see, highlight those notes and delete them, and then go back up and put them where they go correctly. And one more here at the end. Yeah, I think it's a little too loud in the mix still, so I'm going to bring it down in the mix. And I really want to tuck that bass back so it's not like just a foreground sound, but just kind of below the kick drum. So I'm going to assign a low pass filter to it, and I'm just going to bring that cutoff on the filter down. Maybe to about 50. I think it's probably still a little too loud. I really want to tuck this sub bass in the back, so it's just, when you're hearing it on speakers, that it's just kind of, helping the groove, but not like a foreground sound. And sometimes, really tuck that way back in the mix there. I've got it at -8 decibels here, so pretty quiet in the mix. We still got that hi-hat going over the top of this groove. And I think I want to select that hi-hat sound, that closed hi-hat sound. I think I want to put a little bit more delay on it. So it's more kind of got a 16th note vibe, not just but more of a, right? All right, and let's save what we've got so far. Yeah, Les says, can you imagine what the Beatles would have come up with today's gear? Wouldn't it be magical? Yes, it would be. Yes, it would be. Yeah, Lo says, good enough for yesteryear argument forgets that those producers would have loved to have more option to express themselves with. I agree, Lo. Very well said. Let's take a look at the amount of tracks we've used here. We've got sounds on tracks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, but nothing yet at all on track 6 or track 7. So let's keep adding some stuff. Let's add something that will load something rather that we can add in on track 6. I'm going to press Shift and 2 to get us back to our loading screen. I'm going to select an empty slot, and we're going to go back to the main folder of Dub Spectrum. I've got some sustained pad sounds that I recorded out of the Prophet Rev 2 synthesizer. If we just go up here, Dub Spectrum, Prophet Rev 2 sounds, if I enter that folder, we can maybe preview some of these pads and see if something gels. I mean, that's a really great sound that definitely fills out the vibe here. Let's go ahead and add that pad into the mix, shall we? I'm importing that sample to the project. And if we go back, we can just put that on the downbeat of this 8-bar loop. I can bring the volume down quite a bit so that it's, you know, a background sound. And that it doesn't really eat away at our chord stabs. Let's see what happens if I just... Yeah, that's nice. I'm gonna trigger it again to play. We're on track 6, yeah? Yeah, I'm gonna trigger it again to play on the 64. So on the downbeat of every 4 bars, we're gonna trigger that pad. And I'm gonna add some extra reverb and delay to that pad sound. Yeah, cool. And we're going to go to the instrument automation page, and we're going to assign an LFO to the panning of that new pad sound, so we get a little bit of movement in the stereo field. And I think we're going to assign a high-pass filter to that new pad sound as well, to remove some of the low-frequency content from it. Yeah. Exactly. I'm going to set that filter to about 60 on the cutoff, and then we're going to assign an LFO to the cutoff of that pad so we get yet more movement in that pad. Subtle here, maybe like just 15 on the amount of that LFO to the filter. So we've removed any low frequency content from that pad, which is really allowing the sub bass that we put in a little while ago to have its own frequency range in the mix and nothing competing with it. Just more vibe, right? I think I'm gonna max out the reverb and a little more delay on the new pad. Then we're gonna go Shift and 3 and save. I was talking a little while ago about maybe adding a clap sound in on the same track that our open hi-hat is on. Let's go ahead and do that. If I hit Shift and 2, we can get back to the loading screen. And I can pick an empty slot to load a clap sample. And go back to the main folder. And I have a folder here of Dub Spectrum Clap Sounds. We can open that folder and just preview some clap sounds. Try to find one that sort of suits the vibe we've got going here. Let's start at the very beginning. Maybe these are a little loud, so I'll turn the preview volume down a little bit on these. That first one's fine, but let's scroll a little bit more. Hard to pick. Let's pick that one. This is Dub Spectrum Clap number 9. Let's load that to the project. And let's go back to our arrangement screen. Now, here on track 3, we can see that I've got these open hi-hats hitting on the and of every bar. But I want to put the clap happening on the downbeat. That's a different step than the open, than that closed hat rather. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that sample in, then I'm going to skip one, then I'm going to add that, then I'm going to skip one, and add that, and skip one. And what this is doing is putting that clap in on the exact same track as the open hat. And I don't have to utilize, one track per every single sound. It's way too loud. So let's bring the volume on it down. And see, that open hi-hat is still playing because we're putting the clap in on a different step of our part, of our track. I think it's still too loud in the mix. Let's put a little bit of reverb and a little bit of delay on that clap as well. I think maybe it's still too loud in the mix. Let's go ahead and put a low pass filter on that clap as well. Just a gentle low pass filter to sort of shave off a little bit of the high frequency content from that clap. Just really subtle. Still going to tuck it back in the mix even more, just to emphasize that sort of on-off effect, right? Now, like I said, I want to be able to remove the kick from these patterns and still have that wall of vibey texture going on, right? We're doing pretty good with this pattern. Let's do Shift and 3 to get to the save menu, and let's save this. Now we still have one track left. We haven't put anything on track 7. So we could really easily add another ride loop like we did with the first pattern we created. Or we could try to maybe add some more melodics this time, which I think we're going to give a go to. I'm going to hit Shift and 2 to go into the loading screen. It's been just about a 2-hour stream, I think, so we're going to start trying to wrap it up here. But I do want to add one more sound for sure. So I'm going to pick an empty instrument slot here. And I have let's see, where would there's just so many options on where we could go here. I could go to the Dean's Dub Bunker Pack, which is all at 110 F minor, which is the key and tempo that we're writing in here. We could just try to add another chord stab randomly. But I've also created a folder of brand new pumping atmosphere loops for the Dub Spectrum Pack. And they're at 110 F minor, so that everything goes together. Let's go into that folder and preview some of these sounds with what we're creating. Ooh, hold on. Yeah, let's go ahead and just load that. That first pumping atmosphere sound sounds fantastic. Let's go ahead and just add that to the mix. So we'll add that to the mix. We're going to use track 7 to add that sound in. But I don't want it to just sustain the whole time. I'm thinking just a couple of pumps per se, and then have it stop. One cha cha cha, don't cha don't cha, don't cha don't cha, kind of thing. So I'm going to go over to track 7 here. I'm going to hit Shift and Insert to get us to the top. I want it to play for 2 beats, and then I want it to stop. So I'm going to insert it again with a volume, of 0. So it should go don't chat, and then stop. Yeah, that's what I want. And we basically want to put that in every 2 bars. So I'm going to highlight those 2 little notes that make it trigger and then turn off. I'm going to copy those. And then we're just going to put that in every 2 bars. Yeah. 2, time here on 97. Now, it has a little bit of low frequency content, that sort of pumping pad sound. So we're going to put a high pass filter on it and remove some of that low frequency content. Yeah, and I'm going to add a lot of reverb. I'm going to max out the reverb of that. Yeah. And I'm going to tuck it back in the mix by bringing the volume down on that new sound a little. We're going to automate it, moving a little bit left and right in the stereo field to kind of give it its own vibe by going to the panning and assigning that to an LFO and maybe leaving that pretty wide at like 40. So we're getting some movement in the stereo field on it now. We want it, I'm going to bring off more low frequencies. I want it sitting on top of the other sounds and not having to compete with them, but just sort of helping that vibe and that atmosphere just build up a little. I feel like we have a little bit too much reverb on it, and I feel like it's too loud in the mix still. Adjust the filter on it again. Oh, there we go. Hold the phone. I'm going to save what we have here, and let's go ahead and just push it one step further. In a dub techno themed pack that I made many years ago now called Devious Dub Techno, I hired a gentleman to do some reggae flavored vocal samples like Yaman, One Love, and stuff like that. Bring the pressure. Don't laugh at my reggae impersonation there. And let's bring one of those vocal samples in, and let's set it to have a chance effect on it so that sometimes it plays the vocal sample, sometimes it doesn't. I'm just going to play the groove and then navigate. Well, actually, I'll just go ahead and go Shift 2 to get to the load sample page, and we've picked an empty slot to load the vocal sample into. I'm just going to go back up to the main folder here that's included with Dub Spectrum. Again, for those of you who missed the beginning, this pack is not available yet, but will be out shortly. I was just going to create some more patterns for this pack today, and I figured let's do it on a live stream. So I'm looking for the Devious Dub Techno pack. So that full Devious Dub Techno pack is included in the Dub Spectrum pack. The Dub Spectrum is like 700 plus brand new loops and samples, and then thousands of more loops and samples that I gathered from my existing packs that might, be really beneficial here. And there's just, a lifetime of samples to be digging through. There's like for example, the entire sample pack that I created from the Erica Sense Techno system is included in here. Just so many sounds. I mean, you can create lots of different grooves. They don't have to all be 110 beats per minute in the key of F minor. You've got lots of options for what you can create using this pack. A lot of really inspirational sounds here. But now we're in the Devious Dub Techno pack, and we'll scroll down to the folder. Hope you guys can read that. It's very small, but there's a folder of Raga MC vocals, and we'll just go down to that folder, and we're just going to play the groove and see if any of these might just sort of vibe with the groove that we've created. I know this is sort of, a personal preference, and there's not typically reggae vocal guy samples in dub techno, but, that's one of the reasons why this pack is called Dub Spectrum, because you can create a wide spectrum of sounds, textures, and vibes with this pack, not just traditional sounding dub techno. You can create a wide spectrum of different kinds of vibes here. Hey. So we'll drown this in reverb and delay once we choose something.
Hey. Get in the groove and don't be rude.
Bring the preview volume up on these just a little bit more.
Light up the ganja.
For those smokers in the audience,
light up the ganja. Oi! One love.
I think we're going to just grab that one love sample and add that to the project. Now I just need to figure out where to put that, on what track to put that on, so that it won't conflict with the samples that are already playing on that track. I think we're going to go with track 5 to put it on, or maybe track 6 actually, because there seems to be some available space here at the end. And I'm just going to try to put it on this step here, and we'll see where that flows.
One love.
That sounds pretty cool to me. We're going to go ahead and go over to the instrument parameters page and just drown that in reverb and delay. Bring it down in the mix a little maybe.
One love.
Just get some cool vibe in there. Maybe a little bit too much reverb, maybe a little bit too much delay. Maybe we'll assign some LFO to the panning on that so that it moves around where it's happening in the mix.
One love.
Cool. Let's go ahead and also assign a high pass filter to that sound and remove any low frequencies at all, so it's just kind of got a different vibe, kind of riding over the mix.
One love.
Cool. A little bit more of the delay now. And say we don't want that sound, you know, that vocal sample to play every single time it goes through this pattern, right? Maybe we just want it to play some of the times. This is where the chance effect comes into play. So on every single note, on every single step that we're putting an instrument sample on, you've got 2 different effects that you can put. And again, you can choose from any of these effects, from volume to panning. So like you could have a specific sound always on the left, or maybe on the right sometimes, or you know, any number of these type of things. But what we're going to do is we're just going to scroll down and choose the chance effect. Now, if that's set to 0, that vocal sample will never play. If it's set to 100, that vocal sample will always play. So something we could do maybe would be to give that chance a 45% chance that that vocal sample will play. Maybe even less, maybe a 40% chance, so that it's not as likely to play as it is more likely to not play every time we go through the pattern. Now we'll go ahead and save what we've got here. Hey, what's happening, Fade Man? Thanks for tuning in. Les says he was hoping I was going to use the Light Up the Ganja sample. So we always want to be able to take away those drums and still have the vibe going, right? This could be like an intro. We could create a second pattern, and then on the first pattern, take away the drums, right? And there's that One Love sample happening just some of the time now. Okay, let me go ahead and save again. I really like the way that One Love sample floats over the mix. In fact, I think I used that exact same vocal in one of the other patterns. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. I really appreciate those of you who've been hanging out, and especially those of you who've been commenting during the stream. Always welcome and very much appreciated. Thank you. But before we call it today, I would like to go ahead and just load a few more of the patterns that are included in this pack. So let's load up another one of the patterns, shall we? Then maybe we'll take a listen to the pattern that we created in the beginning of this stream one more time as well. This is looks like pattern number 9 that we're loading here. I'm not sure exactly how many patterns I'm going to create as inspiration, you know, to get you started when you're working with this pack, but at least 25. At least 25. Ooh, that's loud.
We're quite underground. underground.
So another one of those vocal samples. All right, let's load a different project. Maybe project 4. See what that one sounds like. Lots of different vibes that I've created already here, from, you know, those slow, just deep washed dub stuff to stuff that's, you know, not 4 on the floor, maybe a little bit higher tempo as well. Like this one here, for example. Not a 4 on the floor beat, and a completely different kind of vibe, but still along those same lush dub vibes. Let's load another one. I really like that last one. That was great. Let's load up pattern number 3 and check that one out. I definitely have some dust floating around in my studio, and it keeps getting on the screen and driving me crazy. All right, so check this out. Yeah, more traditional here, but a little bit faster tempo. Man. I've worked so hard on the new sounds in this pack, and again, they really blend well with some of these existing packs that I've made years ago or the last few years, and am including with these as well. Let's load one. Let's load one more, and then we will check out. I accidentally hit save there, so we just gotta wait a minute for this to save. Let's check out one more of these older patterns that I've made. This here, pattern number 2, and then we'll check out one more time the pattern that we made in the beginning of this stream before we call it a day today. All right. Ooh, that's cool. Nice call and response with the chords here. Some cool percussion in the background. Nice bass line on this one. I like that bass line on this one. Thanks, Les. I appreciate that. Thanks, Fade Man. So again, these are the patterns that are included in this pack that you can load up if you've got the Tracker Mini to get inspiration from. You can use them in your commercial tracks or your non-commercial tracks or your YouTube jams, or just to get inspiration from. Let's go ahead and just load up the pattern that we made on the live stream, the first pattern that we made on this stream, which was pattern number 19. Let's take a quick listen to that in comparison to some of these other patterns that are included. Again, we're just really not doing anything complicated with the Tracker Mini. So if you're into, you know, using the granular, using up the chopping up loops thing, you can really, really go a lot deeper with these sounds than what we're doing here. Yeah, here's the one we made earlier on this stream. Haven't been, you know, mixed on my monitor speakers yet, so there may be slight level adjustments in these few last patterns we've created today as I really, you know, hone in on them with my monitors. I like that ride here. still sounds really good. All right. Good job, us, creating this on the stream. Alright, so we've been going for probably about 2.5 hours now, so it's probably turning into a pretty long stream. Let's just check out the very last one that we made, and then we are going to call it a day today. Thanks again for everyone hanging out. Let's check out the one we just finished, which is pattern number 20. Let's just listen to that one more time. Alright, Fade Man says he's got headphones on. Yeah, right on. Alright, that's probably sounding pretty nice then. Fantastic. Yeah, nice sub bass on this one. Got that clap kind of on the where the snare would typically go on a pattern, so really kind of get that on and off vibe on this one. Yeah, right on. Lots of layers and texture in those chords. Whoops. All right, so this has been Dub Spectrum. That's the name of the sound bank. It's available soon for the Tracker Mini. Unfortunately, just to repeat, it's not going to be compatible with the Tracker OG because that one loads mono samples only. And these are all stereo samples that I've created for the Dub Spectrum pack to really utilize the Tracker Mini's stereo sampling engine. All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And I just want to say one more time, thanks to everyone for hanging out and having fun with me on this stream and checking out some chilled out dub techno today. All right, until next time, take care of each other, my friends. All right.